Lily was a little spark of sunshine, no bigger than a daisy in springtime. Her bright eyes sparkled like glitter glue, and her giggle was like wind chimes on a breezy day. Today was a very special day, one she had been dreaming about for weeks. She was finally going to visit Buckingham Palace. And, of course, she wouldn't go anywhere without her best friend, Barnaby. Barnaby wasn't just any teddy bear. He was a very important bear, with one floppy ear and a slightly worn patch on his tummy from countless hugs. He wore a tiny blue coat that Lily had sewn herself, complete with miniature buttons. To Lily, Barnaby was brave, adventurous, and always ready for a cuddle. Lily clutched Barnaby tightly as she skipped along the path leading to the palace gates. "We're really here, Barnaby," she whispered, her voice filled with excitement. "Just imagine, Barnaby, kings and queens live here. Maybe we'll even see the queen's corgis." She had read all about Buckingham Palace in her favorite storybook. She knew about the changing of the guard, the grand ballroom, and all the secrets hidden within the palace walls. She imagined knights in shining armor, secret passageways, and maybe even a friendly dragon or two, though she kept that thought mostly to herself. Lily's mom squeezed her hand. "Are you excited, sweetie?" Lily nodded so hard her pigtails bounced. "More than words can say. I'm going to see a real palace, and maybe even a real prince." She giggled again, her eyes wide with wonder. Today was going to be the best day ever, and she couldn't wait to see everything Buckingham Palace had to offer, with Barnaby right by her side, of course. As Lily and her mom approached the palace gates, Lily gasped. The palace was even bigger and more amazing than she had imagined. It stretched high into the sky, a giant stone castle with flags waving proudly from the rooftops. Shiny gold gates protected the entrance, and the courtyard was bigger than her whole school. But what caught Lily's eye the most were the royal guards. They stood perfectly still like statues made of people. Their bright red coats stood out against the gray stone of the palace, and their tall, furry hats made them look even taller. They held shiny rifles and stared straight ahead, never blinking, never moving a muscle. Lily knew these guards were very important. Her storybook said they had to follow very strict rules. They weren't allowed to smile, laugh, or even talk while they were on duty. They had to stand perfectly still no matter what. It was their job to protect the queen and the palace, and they took their job very seriously. "Wow," Lily whispered, her voice full of awe. "They're like real-life toy soldiers." Her mom smiled. "They are very important, Lily. They represent the strength and tradition of our country. We must be respectful of them." Lily nodded solemnly. She understood. These guards weren't just wearing funny hats. They were serious protectors of something very important. She watched them carefully, trying to imagine what it would be like to stand so still for so long. It must be very hard. She wondered if they ever got itchy noses or wanted to wiggle their toes. She was pretty sure she couldn't do it. She was too full of wiggles and giggles. She was glad that at least Barnaby was there to keep her company. Lily continued to stare, her head swiveling this way and that, trying to take in everything at once. There were so many flags, so many windows, so many pigeons. A whole flock of pigeons suddenly took flight, flapping their wings and cooing loudly. Lily jumped, startled by the sudden movement. In that moment of surprise, her grip loosened. "Oh no!" Barnaby slipped from her grasp. Felt like time slowed down. Lily watched in horror as Barnaby tumbled through the air, his little blue coat billowing around him. He seemed to float for a moment, almost as if he were flying, before landing with a soft thump right in the middle of the path, directly in front of one of the royal guards. Lily's eyes widened, and her heart skipped a beat. Barnaby! He was lying there, helpless, right in the path of the most serious person she had ever seen. She gasped, a little cry escaping her lips. "Barnaby!" she cried, reaching out as if she could somehow magically pull him back. Tears welled up in her eyes. It wasn't just that she had dropped her teddy bear. It was that she had dropped him in such a forbidden place, in front of someone who looked like they could never, ever bend down. The royal guard stood as still as ever, but Lily could only focus on Barnaby, lying on the cold stone. He looked so small and vulnerable. She imagined him feeling scared and lonely. She knew she had to get him back. But how? The guard was right there. What was she going to do? The royal guard remained motionless. He was a giant of a man, or at least he seemed that way to Lily. His red coat was so bright it almost hurt her eyes, and his tall, black bearskin hat made him seem even taller and more imposing. His face was hidden in shadow, but Lily could feel his gaze fixed straight ahead, unblinking, unwavering. He stood like a statue carved from stone, a symbol of strength and duty. His shoulders were broad, his back ramrod straight. The rifle in his hands gleamed in the sunlight. He was the picture of unwavering discipline, a guardian of the palace, a protector of the queen. Lily held her breath. The air seemed to thicken with suspense. Everyone around her had gone silent, their eyes fixed on the guard. Would he move? Could he even see Barnaby lying there on the ground? Lily knew the rules were strict. She had heard stories of guards who had stood for hours without flinching, even when it rained or when people tried to make them laugh. But Barnaby was right there in his path. Surely he couldn't just ignore him? Surely even the strictest royal guard had a heart? Lily's hopes dwindled. He hadn't even twitched. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Lily's mom squeezed her hand reassuringly, but Lily couldn't take her eyes off the guard. He was like a mountain, unmovable, unyielding. Would he break protocol? Would he risk getting in trouble just to help a little girl and her teddy bear? The suspense was almost unbearable. Lily's bottom lip trembled. Then, something incredible happened. Slowly, deliberately, the royal guard began to move. It started with the slightest shift of his shoulders, almost imperceptible. Then his knees began to bend. It was so slow, so controlled, that it felt like watching a tree slowly sway in the wind. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. It was as if everyone had been holding their breath, and now they were finally exhaling in disbelief. The murmurs and whispers died away, replaced by a complete and utter hush. Even the pigeons seemed to sense the importance of the moment and fell silent, perching on the nearby rooftops, watching with beady eyes. Lily's eyes widened even further. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The royal guard, the unmovable, unyielding royal guard, was actually bending down. It was like watching a statue come to life. Her heart leaped with a mixture of hope and astonishment. The world seemed to fade away, and all that mattered was the slow, deliberate movement of the guard. Each inch he lowered was a victory against the rigid rules, a testament to something more powerful than duty, kindness. The only sound was the faint creak of his leather belt and the soft rustle of his red coat as he lowered himself closer and closer to the ground. The silence was so profound that Lily could almost hear her own heart beating, thump thump, thump thump, with anticipation. Would he really do it? Would he really break protocol for Barnaby? The answer was just moments away. Finally, the royal guard reached Barnaby. He paused for a moment, his large, gloved hand hovering over the small, fluffy bear. The contrast was striking. His hand was so big, so strong, so official. Barnaby was so small, so soft, so cuddly. It was like seeing a giant reaching for a cloud. With surprising gentleness, the guard carefully scooped up Barnaby. His fingers, usually gripping a rifle, now cradled the teddy bear as if he were holding a precious jewel. Lily could see the worn patch on Barnaby's tummy, the one she had tried to mend so many times. In the guard's huge hand, it looked even more endearing. The guard held Barnaby for a moment, just a fleeting second, but it felt like an eternity. He seemed to be studying him, as if trying to understand the importance of this small, furry creature. Perhaps he was remembering a teddy bear of his own, from long ago. Perhaps he was thinking of a little girl somewhere far away. The silence in the crowd was absolute. Everyone was captivated by the sight of the royal guard holding the teddy bear. It was a moment of pure, unexpected tenderness in the midst of all the pomp and circumstance. It was a reminder that even the most serious people have a soft side, a heart that can be touched by something as simple as a child's love for her toy. Lily felt a surge of gratitude towards the guard. He didn't have to do this, but he did. And in that moment, he was more than just a royal guard. He was a hero. Then the royal guard did something even more unexpected. As he straightened up, he turned towards Lily and, just for a fleeting moment, a tiny smile touched his lips. It was so subtle, so quick, that Lily almost thought she had imagined it. But it was there, a small, almost imperceptible curve of his mouth that transformed his serious face into something kind. He extended his arm, offering Barnaby back to Lily. Relief washed over her in a warm wave, chasing away the fear and worry. Joy bubbled up inside her, so strong it made her want to laugh and cry at the same time. And then there was wonder. Wonder at the kindness of this stranger, wonder at the magic of the moment, wonder at the fact that even the strictest rules could be broken by a little bit of compassion. Lily reached out, her hands trembling slightly, and took Barnaby back. He felt warm and familiar in her arms, like coming home after a long journey. She hugged him tightly, burying her face in his soft fur. "Oh, Barnaby," she whispered. "I'm so glad you're back." She looked up at the royal guard, her eyes shining with gratitude. He was already resuming his position, his face once again stoic and unreadable. But Lily knew. She knew that behind that stern exterior, there was a heart. And that heart had just given her the most wonderful gift she could have asked for. The world seemed brighter, the palace seemed grander, and Barnaby seemed even more special than before. This was a moment she would never forget. Clutching Barnaby tightly, Lily looked up at the royal guard, her eyes brimming with sincerity. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you so much. You're the best royal guard ever." She couldn't stop the words from tumbling out, a rush of gratitude overflowing from her heart. "Barnaby and I are really grateful." She wanted to tell him how brave she thought he was, how kind, how much he had made her day. She wanted to give him a hug, or a drawing, or something to show him just how much his simple act meant to her. But she knew she couldn't. He was a royal guard, after all, and royal guards didn't get hugs from little girls. The guard, still standing ramrod straight, simply inclined his head a fraction of an inch. It was a subtle nod, barely noticeable, but Lily saw it. It was his way of acknowledging her thanks, his way of saying, "You're welcome," without breaking his stoic demeanor. Then, with a precision that was almost robotic, he resumed his position. He straightened his shoulders, gripped his rifle, and fixed his gaze straight ahead. He was once again the unyielding guardian of the palace, a symbol of unwavering duty. It was as if the moment of kindness had never happened, as if he had simply reset himself to his default setting. But Lily knew better. She knew that behind that impassive mask, there was a human being, a person who had chosen to do something kind, something special, something that had made all the difference in her day. And that was enough. She didn't need him to say anything more. His actions had spoken louder than any words ever could. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, and the image of him bending down to get Barnaby would forever be imprinted on her heart. The crowd, which had been holding its breath in anticipation, now erupted in a murmur of surprise and delight. People began to chatter excitedly, their voices buzzing like bees around a hive. The usual atmosphere of solemn respect that surrounded the royal guards had been shattered, replaced by a sense of joyful wonder. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. "He actually bent down." "I can't believe it," another voice exclaimed. "I've never seen anything like it." Several people pulled out their phones and cameras, eager to capture the moment. Flashes popped, illuminating the guard's stoic face and Lily's beaming smile. The click of cameras filled the air, preserving the memory of this extraordinary event. Even the other royal guards, standing rigidly at their posts, seemed to have softened slightly. Though they didn't move or speak, Lily thought she detected a flicker of something in their eyes, perhaps a hint of amusement, or maybe even a touch of pride in their fellow guards' unexpected act of kindness. The air was now charged with a new kind of energy. The stiff formality that usually reigned supreme at Buckingham Palace had been replaced by a feeling of warmth and connection. It was as if the royal guard's simple act had reminded everyone that even in the most traditional of settings, there was always room for compassion and humanity. The image of this moment would surely be etched in the minds of everyone who witnessed it. It was a gentle reminder that a little bit of kindness can go a long way, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. With Barnaby safely back in her arms, Lily continued her tour of Buckingham Palace. But now everything felt different. The palace seemed even more magical, the gardens even more beautiful, and the whole experience was infused with a special kind of wonder. She clutched Barnaby tightly, as if afraid she might lose him again. But this time, it wasn't just about keeping him safe. It was about cherishing the memory they had just created together. They had shared a moment of unexpected kindness, a moment that had touched the hearts of everyone around them. As she walked through the grand halls and admired the sparkling chandeliers, Lily imagined the Queen herself smiling down on them, knowing that even in a place of such formality, a little bit of love and compassion could shine through. She wondered if the Queen had ever dropped her teddy bear in front of a royal guard when she was a little girl. She looked at Barnaby, his one floppy ear bouncing with each step. "We'll never forget this day, will we, Barnaby?" she whispered. "We met a real-life hero." She knew that the royal guard would probably never know the impact he had made on her life. He would continue to stand at his post, guarding the palace with unwavering dedication. But Lily would always remember him, not just as a symbol of strength and duty, but as a symbol of kindness and compassion. And every time she saw a royal guard, she would smile, knowing that behind that stern exterior, there was a heart capable of extraordinary tenderness. The rest of the tour was filled with new excitement as she was looking for the corgis. The moment Lily got home, she couldn't wait to recreate the magical events of the day. "Barnaby," she announced, grabbing her toy box, "it's time for you to be a royal guard." She rummaged through the box and pulled out a cardboard tube, a red marker, and some black felt. With a flurry of glue and imagination, she fashioned a miniature bearskin hat for Barnaby. It wobbled a bit on his head, but it was perfect. "Now you have to stand very still," she instructed, placing Barnaby on a small stool. "You're guarding the Queen's, cookie jar." Lily then grabbed her own toy rifle, a bright pink water gun, and pretended to march back and forth in front of Barnaby, mimicking the royal guard's stiff posture. "Halt!" she commanded in a deep voice, trying to sound as serious as possible. Then, she deliberately dropped Barnaby onto the floor. "Oh no!" she cried dramatically. "Barnaby has fallen." She paused, pretending to be the royal guard, thinking hard. She muttered. "What should I do? I'm not supposed to move." But then, she remembered the real royal guard's kindness. "But Barnaby needs me," she exclaimed, bending down with exaggerated slowness. "I must save him." She carefully picked up Barnaby and returned him to his post, giving him a little hug. "You're safe now, Royal Guard Barnaby," she said, giggling. "The Queen's cookies are safe too." Lily then asked her mom if she could make Barnaby a little uniform like the Royal Guard. This would be a new project for her and Barnaby. That night, as Lily drifted off to sleep, her mind was still filled with images of Buckingham Palace and the kind Royal Guard. Her dreams swirled with red coats, bearskin hats, and endless corridors. And then the dream took a fantastical turn. She found herself standing tall and proud, wearing a bright red Royal Guard uniform, but it was perfectly her size. Her pink water gun had transformed into a gleaming golden rifle. But the most surprising thing was who she was guarding. Perched upon a miniature throne, wearing a tiny golden crown that kept slipping over his floppy ear, was Barnaby. He was King Barnaby, ruler of all the teddy bears, and Lily was his loyal protector. In her dream, the palace was filled with other stuffed animals, brave toy soldiers, elegant porcelain dolls, and mischievous sock monkeys. They all looked up to King Barnaby with admiration and respect. Suddenly, a rogue squeaky toy came bounding towards the throne, intent on causing chaos. "Halt!" Lily commanded, her voice surprisingly deep and authoritative. The squeaky toy froze in its tracks, intimidated by her stern gaze. Lily stood guard all night long, protecting King Barnaby from all sorts of imaginary threats. She battled dragons made of blankets, chased away mischievous dust bunnies, and even negotiated a peace treaty with a grumpy old teddy bear who claimed the throne was rightfully his. When the first rays of sunlight peeked through her window, Lily awoke with a smile on her face. She remembered her dream and chuckled. Even in her sleep, she was still thinking about the royal guard and his act of kindness. She knew this memory would be treasured for many years to come. Later that day, as the changing of the guard ceremony took place, another royal guard, named Thomas, approached the guard who had helped Lily. Thomas had witnessed the whole incident and was curious. "Edward," Thomas said, his voice low and respectful. "I couldn't help but notice." The teddy bear, Edward, the guard who had helped Lily, remained stoic. He knew Thomas was referring to his breaking of protocol. He waited for Thomas to continue. "You know the rules, Edward. We're not supposed to break formation, not supposed to interact with the public, not supposed to, well, Thomas finished, gesturing vaguely towards the spot where Barnaby had fallen. Edward finally spoke, his voice a low rumble, barely audible above the sounds of the changing of the guard. "I am aware of the rules, Thomas." Thomas shifted slightly, adjusting his bearskin hat. "Then why, Edward? Why did you do it? Everyone saw you. There will be questions." Edward paused, his gaze fixed straight ahead. He thought about Lily's face, her eyes filled with worry and then with joy. He thought about Barnaby, lying there on the cold stone. He knew he had broken the rules, but in that moment it hadn't felt like a choice. It had felt like the right thing to do. He turned his head slightly towards Thomas, just enough to meet his gaze. "Sometimes, Thomas," he said quietly, "there are things more important than rules." He hoped that was enough of an explanation. Thomas frowned slightly, waiting for Edward to elaborate. He knew Edward wasn't usually one to bend the rules. There had to be more to it than just a simple act of kindness. Edward sighed softly, then continued, his voice still barely a whisper. "I have a little girl, Thomas. Her name is Sophie. She's about Lily's age." Thomas's eyes widened slightly. He knew Edward had a daughter, but he rarely spoke about her. "Sophie has a teddy bear too," Edward continued. "A very old, very loved teddy bear named Captain Snuggles. He goes everywhere with her." Edward paused, a flicker of emotion crossing his usually stoic face. "I just imagined Sophie losing Captain Snuggles. I imagined how heartbroken she would be, and I knew I couldn't just stand there and do nothing." He looked at Thomas, his eyes pleading for understanding. "It wasn't just a teddy bear, Thomas. It was a little girl's best friend. It was her comfort, her security. And I knew, in that moment, that helping her was more important than following the rules." Edward added, "I knew that if Sophie had lost Captain Snuggles, she would have been devastated, and that's why I had to act." Thomas, who did not have any children, understood Edward's actions. Thomas nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. He finally understood why Edward had broken protocol. It wasn't just about a teddy bear. It was about a father's love for his daughter and his ability to see that love reflected in another child's eyes. The changing of the guard ceremony continued, the soldiers marching with precision and the band playing a stirring tune. But for Edward, the music faded into the background. His thoughts were miles away, back home with Sophie. He pictured her small face, her bright eyes, her infectious giggle. He imagined her snuggling with Captain Snuggles, feeling safe and loved. He thought about how much joy she brought into his life, how she made even the toughest days worthwhile. A warmth spread through his chest, chasing away the worry and the fear of consequences. He knew he had done the right thing, even if it meant facing repercussions. He had shown a little bit of kindness in a world that often seemed too serious, too rigid, too unforgiving. And then, a small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. It was the same smile he had given Lily, a fleeting expression of warmth and compassion. It was a smile that spoke volumes, a smile that revealed the heart beneath the red coat and the bearskin hat. The smile was because he knew that what he had done was right. He knew that even though he might face consequences for his actions, he wouldn't trade that moment of kindness for anything. Because sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can make the biggest difference in the world. That's what mattered most. He could hear Sophie laughing in his head.